Hey, welcome back to the channel, Wargamers. Death from Above. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Kevin.
We're here to talk about classic BattleTech. This is our How to Play series. And today,
we're going to be covering taking damage. So in our last segment, we talked about shooting and hit locations. So now is sort of the effects of that, right? Now you get to reap your sweet rewards. So based on the location you hit per weapon, each of those weapons, if you recall from before, had a damage value. So you're going to start applying those damage values to the different sections that they apply to on the table.
Right. So if, for example, you hit me in the left arm with a PPC, PPC does 10 damage. And so what I would do is I would look at my record sheet, right? And every mech record sheet has an armor diagram at the top. It's sort of your external facing armor, and then your internal structure on the bottom right-hand side. What happens is you always apply damage first to the top diagram to the armor diagram. So I would mark off as many dots as I could, as many pips as I could on that armor diagram. And if I run out of pips, let's say I only have 6 on my arm, right? They transfer into the internal structure.
You've broken through the armor at that point.
Busted through the armor. Now you're in the internal structure. The Tootsie Roll Center, as I like to call it, of the mech. You start marking off any rollover damage into that location. Now it's important to note that the torso sections, and only the torso sections, have rear armor specifically, right? Because they're so bulky, I guess. When you hit them in the rear arc and you roll center torso, for example, there's a special section on your sheet on that armor diagram where you would mark off rear torso armor.
And they're essentially the weak points of the mech, right? That rear torso is really where you want to flank and hit with some of your mechs to get those hopefully critical hits and hitting that internal damage.
Yeah, exactly, right, because there's less armor, it's much easier to punch through. And so, when you completely fill up a section of internal structure, right, so if I mark off all the damage on that left arm that's available, what happens is that location is destroyed, right? So if you destroy an arm, you lose all the weapons on the arm, you can't punch with the arm. If you destroy a leg, mech falls over, you lose both legs, you can't get back up. If a side torso is destroyed, the arm gets taken off with it, even if that arm is in perfect condition. So losing a side torso can be pretty catastrophic. And then, of course, center torso and head, it's over, right? Engines destroyed, you're dead. Cockpit destroyed. That mech is removed as a casualty. So basically you're trying to fill up the internal structure of your opponents, and if you can keep that targeted to the center torso or the head, I mean, you'll kill them even quicker. Damage also transfers for destroyed locations. So if you knock off my left arm, right, and subsequently you hit it again, or if there's leftover damage, let's say the PPC hits me and I only have 4 dots on my internal structure. What happens to the rollover damage? That will transfer inward. So any of the appendages, arms and legs, goes to the side torso. Side torsos transfer in. It's pretty straightforward. There's a little diagram in the book and on the record sheet, so you know exactly how to do that. But that's an important part of the game because no damage is really lost.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other aspect, when you start penetrating and hitting that internal structure, each weapon hit, not each damage point, but each weapon hit that you apply on internal structure, you have a chance of applying a critical hit. You also have a chance of applying a critical hit when you roll a natural 2 on the hit location table. Naturally, you're going to hit just the facing torso, so if you're in the front or the back, you're going to hit the center. If you're in the left or the right, you're going to hit that respective torso side.
Right.
But we play with the optional floating critical rule.
Floating critical.
So essentially, you're going to re-roll your location die to find out where you might apply that critical hit. It could be an arm, a side torso, or anywhere really based on the hit location table. Again, it kind of makes critical hits more dynamic, so you like playing with that rule.
Yeah, exactly.
That critical hit confirmation, so it's not an automatic critical hit. You essentially roll a probability to see whether or not you get that critical hit. It's essentially an 8 or higher.
8 or higher,
Higher the number, you can have more than one critical hit, and this is really where you start reaping the tears, right? Really causing some damage. This is where things get exciting because critical hits can have all sorts of disastrous effects. And essentially, when you do confirm a critical hit, there's a special table of all the components that are within a section of that mech that you're now going to roll against to see both an inner and an outer table, 2d6 roll in most cases, or sometimes if there's not as many components, just single d6 to see which component got nailed with that critical hit. And this is really where things can happen that are quite catastrophic.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole host of critical hits. We'll go over a couple. We won't go over them in detail. There's a whole chapter. The fun ones, right? There's a whole chapter on it. But the big ones really are, engine hits, right? That's the most notable one. Mostly in the Succession Wars era, you're talking standard engines, just center torso. Later years, right, they start expanding out and doing weird thing. You can hit them from side torso. But basically, you get an engine hit. The mech starts building up a lot of heat, right? You build
Clean
up extra
fusion,
heat.
no explosions, just a little leakage, right?
Just a little leakage.
The heat shielding leakage.
Right, and you get 3 engine hits, that mech's knocked out,
Yeah.
right? The other critical component in the mech is the gyroscope, right? So this is the thing that, on the fluff, right, it keeps the mech upright, allows the pilot...
It's the inner ear.
It's the inner ear of the mech, right? And the pilot sort of controls this through its Noro helmet, right? And so if you destroy this delicate apparatus... the mech has all sorts of goofy penalties, like it can't run as well.
It's drunk.
It's like basically drunk. You fall over all the time. It's bad, right? Making piloting rolls is a lot more challenging. 2 gyro hits and the mech's basically crippled. It's not destroyed, but just laying on the ground.
Right.
Weapon critical hits, another big one. So, if someone's coming at you with an AC-20, that thing takes up like 7 criticals or something. I don't even know. And you land a single critical hit to a weapon, and it's knocked out, right? And weapons can take up the same weapon, and you'll notice it by a bracket on the sheet, right? It's showing, this large laser is these 3 criticals, or these 2 criticals, rather. If you hit either of those, that weapon's...
Right. And in general, larger weapons take up more spaces. They're easier to hit and knock out of combat.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Kevin's most favorite critical hit of all time is, of course, the ammo critical hit. So there are ammo bins. And next to that ammo bin, it'll tell you how much ammo is in that bin for a specific weapon. And as you're marking off ammo on your sheet, for certain things, you may want to... You can draw ammo by the rules from any ammo bin that fits that weapon, right? And so if you are playing someone like Kevin, and it's important to mark off which ammo bin that's coming out of, that might be something you can do down in the critical spot location.
Right. In general, though, if you have a bin, I think you can just divide by the number of ammo bins. And
Yeah, you can figure out it's coming from each of them evenly. I typically, the way I like to declare it at the beginning of the game is that I'm going to try to drain one as quickly as possible before moving on to the next.
I'm always draining the one that you just hit.
Right. That's how I play. Whatever one Kevin hits is the one that's empty. And so that's ammo crits. Ammo crits are dangerous because when you hit an ammo bin, I mean, it's basically game over for mech because everything explodes.
It's a fiery explosion.
A fire explosion. And God bless anybody with a machine gun because those things actually do more damage to you than they do to your opponent. So for example, if I have an LRM-20, right, 20 points of damage, capable, right, firing 21-point missiles, and I have just 3 rounds of ammunition left, and you hit it, that does 60 points of damage. And the worst part of ammo explosions is that it's internal structure. And when it transfers to the internal structure. So normal damage, if I blow off that left arm, it will transfer to the left torso, but it will start with the armor, right, the exterior, before going back internal. Ammo explosions just go straight right through. Right. So you're almost guaranteed to die.
Except for in some of the most rare cases where you've either spent a lot of ammo or you're
an Atlas.
Really beefy. Yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly. Or you're a 100-ton mech with a ton of pips, right? So that's ammo.
Protect your ammo bins.
Protect your ammo bins. We'll talk about dumping ammo later. That's a thing that can happen in the end phase. We'll have another video on that. The other thing that can happen is damage to the mech warrior, right? So your pilot can take damage during an ammo explosion. Some other critical hits are the actuators, right? So your mech is equipped with actuators. They're basically your joints, right? Elbows, knees, fingers, toes.
Hips, shoulders.
Hips and shoulders. And so when one of these are hit, depending on where it is, it can affect your movement. If it's in the legs, it can affect your ability to shoot if it's in the arm, right? So any weapons in that arm, will be a little harder to shoot. You'll be a little slower to move. Sometimes if you jump with a damaged actuator, you may have to take a piloting check. Hips and shoulders are more substantial effects and can really make it almost impossible to shoot or very difficult to move. Go ahead.
So you mentioned piloting checks. So the other problem is with damage, right? You apply too much damage. If you go over 20 damage, there's a chance that the target may fall over because they're going to have to make a piloting check anytime they go over that 20 damage threshold.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So those piloting checks we talked about before, That target will then have to roll a piloting check to see whether or not the sustained damage caused them to get knocked over or stay standing. So applying a lot of damage also without applying criticals has that added benefit of you might just knock the guy over from sheer force.
Yeah, and the stacking, right? So if you get hit by multiple mechs,
and this is the optional rule we play with, right?
Yeah, and it's in the BattleTech manual. So basically every 20 points of damage, so 20, 40, 60, 80
successive modifiers,
right? That stacks, right? So I mean, if you get really blasted from a couple different angles and you take a substantial amount of damage, it makes it even harder to stay upright, which is always fun. Right. So I don't know. I think we covered everything here on damage. So we'll do a little bit of a quick demo here to show you how to mark damage on a record sheet, what that looks like, what damage transfer looks like. But our next video really will be focused on the physical attack phase, one of our favorites.
Another way to apply damage.
Another way to apply damage. So after you watch the physical video, make sure you come back and rewatch this video because you're going to need to reapply damage after you kick your opponent. Subsequently, after you knock him down.
Another important part. So the damage applying phase happens after shooting and after physical attacks.
Right.
Both separately, including those pilot checks that you might have had to take.
Yeah, and I guess one final point is, so damage effects happen at the end of the phase in which they're applied. So it's a great point. So, if I knock off your arm in the shooting phase...
Can't punch with it.
Can't punch with it in the physical phase. Good point.
But you could pick up that arm with the other arm and swing with it, but we'll talk about that later.
Wow. All right. Well, on that note, thanks again for checking in. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next video.